Hi. So I am not going to talk about what I do at Medtronic. How's that for fascinating, even though it says Medtronic? So yes, I work at Medtronic. I work in the surgical robotics group. We are building a surgical robot. It's public knowledge if you haven't known this. I've been there for 4 years now. We were originally Covidian, then we got bought, so now we're Medtronic. We have looked at AR interfaces. That's something that's under consideration, but that's not what we're going to talk about here. So what I'm going to talk about is actually things that I did prior to Medtronic. So I have worked on 4 commercial surgical robots now, and I've done a ton of AR and VR applied to surgical training. That was what I did for years. And one of the last projects I did before I joined Medtronic was an AR system that is really kind of unique. And I've never talked about it in public because we were not allowed to. We were under lock and key on it. But it's been 5 years, guess what, about agreements. And also it never went public. They never deployed the system. So I thought it'd be fun to actually show you guys a very unique kind of an AR system, and then we get a big argument about whether it's mixed virtuality or not or whatever as far as that goes. So, all right, there we go. So medical device companies have a problem especially when you have complex systems or if you're converting surgeons from one way of doing a procedure to another, that you have to put them through training. And that either involves live animals, it might involve cadavers, it might involve inanimate surrogates, which might be some kind of rubber, silicone rubber, fancy things like syndavers. You can sometimes even use chicken or beef out of the grocery store, depending on what it is. A lot of it's not very satisfying in the end, however. So there's been a movement for quite a few years now to try and improve the situation here to build surgical simulators. Most of these are computationally based, and you're doing some kind of an interaction in simulation. They're largely haptics in some form or another. It's usually tool-tissue interaction that you're experiencing. It's forces and torques. It's not typically tactile. I'll talk more about that. As soon as you involve tactility, it kind of screws the whole idea of surgical simulation in its current form for the most part. And so we're going to talk about that. So what I'm going to use as a case study was a device called Tula, which was from Acclarent, which was a company bought by Johnson & Johnson for a significant sum of money. And this was going to be the thing that was going to make a lot of money for them. So it was designed for myringotomies. Myringotomies are basically when you put a drain into the ear of somebody who has long-term ear infection problems. It's typically done as an in-hospital outpatient procedure because it's typically done on children. You have to put it under general anesthesia because they scream and worm and raise hell while you do it. And the procedure lasts in the 30-second range. Because all they have to do is make a little nick, the otolaryngologist drops this tube in and you're done. But it means some parent has to stay home from school or stay home from work, kids out of school, et cetera. So Acclarent had come up with a way to do this minimally invasively. It involves this little device, single button. You basically went through that thing's called a speculum, the way that this is done, a cone, whatever you want to say, that guy right there. You put it down through the tube, you make approximation to the tympanic tympanic membrane, which is right there, and this is a close-up. You use a surgical microscope, that's approximately what the view is. It's a little bit larger than normal. Press it on there, hit a button, and thump, in 100 milliseconds, it cuts, spreads, deploys, and retracts. And that's faster than your startle reflex. So, and then what they do in addition to that is they do use iontophoresis. They put some little headphones in. They use lidocaine, ionize it, use a electric current, pulls the anesthetic into the ear, and then you don't feel it also. So they were like totally going to make money on this. This is like making it an office procedure. And everybody was like, yes. So the problem was this is how they train them. That's a real surgical microscope. That's a real dummy. And this is what it looks like when you look down the surgical microscope to do the deployment. And the problem is that's what the actual training thing was, which was a garbage bag stretched over the surface of a thingy. That they tried a lot of different things and found out a certain kind of garbage bag was very close in terms of how it felt for a tympanic membrane. Here's the problem. Every time you tap the button to deploy that, it cost them $100. And they needed to do at least 5 deployments to be comfortable doing it. So it was costing them a fortune to be able to train surgeons. So they're like, why do we have to do that? Why can't we get around this and try something else? So therefore, they brought us in. I worked for a small company. We did a bunch of weird, very exotic kinds of simulators. We did a whole bunch of work in deconstructing the procedure. It turned out that seeing, feeling, manipulating, and hearing were all incredibly important to do this procedure. You had to look through the microscope, which was binocular, stereoscopic. You had to be able to manipulate the microscope. You had to be able to manipulate the patient's head, whether right side or left side, to get the exact right angles. You had to be able to manipulate the speculum simultaneously with holding the tool to put through the speculum and then hitting the button, which would make this very clear sound, doink. And so we ended up doing a ton of different things. This is your typical design thinking, trying different stuff in different ways. Ended up with a concept like this. So basically we have a Hasbro My3D, which was basically the modern version of a ViewMaster. This is 5 years ago. I'm going to point this out. So some of this technology is somewhat dated. We used an optical tracker, which you can see here, which is designed for an infrared tracker for disabilities. We did a custom bit here with a spatial tracker. It's a 3D connection. And then we also had a MEMS sensor. Where's this thing? MEMS sensor down inside here to give you the actual forces. And basically, we had this crazy data flow thing. So we had on iPhone running Vuforia, which did stereoscopic rendering on the phone. It did marker tracking. I'll show you the AR marker here in a second that it did. We did pose information from the marker back to the laptop. The pose information was telling you where the phone was relative to the patient, because you could move the patient and you could move the phone, which was your simulated binoculars. On here, we actually did a real-time finite element simulation of the membrane that you were contacting. Then on this side, we were also measuring the actual forces that you were contacting, which was driving the finite element simulation. And then as far as the actual device, we were using an IR tracker. So you can see we have a whole bunch of stuff flying around on here, all running in real time under 100 milliseconds. This is what it looked like. So there's markers here, infrared tracker. That's your infamous AR tracking marker. We got cute and made it look like what the actual procedure is. You just need a lot of texture to be able to track it well. You'll notice it's quite large because we needed to have really high resolution. We were working at 0.1 millimeter resolution to be able to make this work right. And there's what it looks like when it was running, in contrast to the one in the background, which is the real system that they were using at the time. So you can see the real view, and then you can see the simulated view. I'll show you some details here. We'll get some good pictures. And it had to go into a flight case. 2 minutes left? Holy crap. Okay. It had to go into a flight case, and the whole thing had to cost less than $20,000. We used a ton of stuff that was basically, we repurposed all kinds of things to do this. So this is the My3D, or the 3D connection, the MEMS stuff. We actually used a Z-Wave transmitter to actually figure out when the button was pressed and be able to do it wirelessly. Built a ton of custom pieces here. We actually did our own calibrations because we had to make it work to 0.1 millimeters. And then actually this is showing a little bit of that, which I'm not going to go through, but it shows actually how closely we were pivoting about a fixed point, and the size of the tool is 2 millimeters, so you can see how closely we were actually able to track things. This is using Vuforia. We did a bunch of vision correction. We started with these cute little markers which don't work because they don't have enough resolution, and we had to keep working our way up. And that's what it looked like when we got our initial renderings going. This is what it looked like when you got to stereoscopic. Now you actually see a little trick we had to do. We had to have depth of field because the microscopes only show about 2 millimeters in focus. So we had to do synthetic depth of field to get the right results. This is what it looked like on the instructor console that was watching simultaneously. And you had the ability to control your own points of view, whatever you wanted to do here. And yes, we had really high resolution meshes in there. This is what it looked like when you had it all set up and running. And this, we actually had little markers that would tell us things about the state of the simulator because we were talking over Wi-Fi to each other. Amongst other things, we had a local area network that did everything. And that's just different views. And then these are live. So can you start those videos? I'll do this really fast. So notice there's a little ring of light. See that change in the lighting? It turns out that's incredibly important for the procedure. So we had to do all kinds of things with shaders and the likes to get our lighting right. And then hit the other one real quick. And this is actually doing real-time contacts. So we were hitting hundreds of contacts simultaneously and doing our own constraint management. We built our own simulation toolkit, which you can download. It's called OpenSurgeSim. We worked on it for years. I can tell anybody who wants to know about it more. It does a lot of calculations. All right, is that going to work? Are we ready to go forward? Is it? It's not happy with me. There we go. We measured a ton of stuff, so we could give you all kinds of things quantitatively so that you could get objective measure without having, we're done. Good, I made it. And here's the, sorry, I do talk fast normally anyways. We made a bunch of these, and then it all went away because they killed the project. And because they never got the indication from the FDA to do the pediatric use. And so basically everything shut down. So we spent a year doing this, 5 of us working on it, and it never saw the light of day. And this is the first time I've ever talked about it in public. I thought it'd be kind of fun for somebody to see a really unique AR system. And there you go, we're done.